Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, today we are diving into something absolutely fascinating. We're looking at a source document that takes these ancient, thousands of years old prophecies from Isaiah 54, specifically looking at verses 10 through 17, and connects them directly to the modern geopolitical landscape of Israel. It's seriously an incredible look at the historical significance of the return to the land, basically mapping ancient words onto modern history. Let's get right into it. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting 6 main themes: the eternal covenant, foundations of sapphire, established in righteousness, geopolitics and modern conflict, the creator's control, and finally, the ultimate promise. Starting right off with section 1, the eternal covenant, focusing on the return to the land. So to really grasp the geopolitics here, we've got to look at the timeline the source lays out. It starts way back in 70 AD, when Jerusalem was desolated. Then, by 135 AD, the Romans actually renamed Judea to Syria Palestina in an active effort to erase Jewish identity. And then we fast forward through literal centuries of history, all the way to May 14th, 1948, when the modern state of Israel was officially declared. This vast historical foundation is, quite frankly, absolutely crucial for understanding the text we're analyzing today. Isaiah chapter 54, verse 10 states, "For the mountains shall depart, and the hills be removed. But my kindness shall not depart from thee, neither shall the covenant of my peace be removed, saith the Lord that hath mercy on thee." Just think about that immense imagery for a second. But what does a departing mountain actually mean when we're talking about modern geopolitics? Well, here is the key takeaway from the source. Think about how long it actually takes for weather to erode a huge mountain into a flat plain. I mean, we're talking millions of years, right? Essentially forever. The text interprets this verse to mean that the 1948 Second Restoration is exactly that, a permanent covenant. According to this analysis, this marks a definitive, hard stop to the historical scatterings. The idea here is that there simply won't be another one. Moving right along to Section 2, Foundations of Sapphire, where we look at rebuilding the nation. Isaiah chapter 54, verse 11 states, "O thou afflicted, tossed with tempest, and not comforted, behold, I will lay thy stones with fair colors, and lay thy foundations with sapphires." You can really feel the emotional transformation happening here. It's moving away from the stormy, heavily afflicted past, right into being comforted by a foundation made of these brilliant, unshakable sapphires. Isaiah chapter 54, verse 12 states, "And I will make thy windows of agates, and thy gates of carbuncles, and all thy borders of pleasant stones." Now, this continuous imagery of precious jewels, it isn't about literal architecture, It's pointing to a much, much deeper meaning. The source makes it super clear that these gemstones are basically acting as powerful metaphors. So the stones and sapphires, they symbolize a highly secure future and just immense strength. Then you've got the agates and carbuncles, which represent incredible splendor and high value. And finally, those borders of pleasant stones, those stand for divine protection and wealth. It is this complete, ground-up transformation from deep suffering to an enduring, beautiful establishment. And that brings us to Section 3, Established in Righteousness, focusing on spiritual education and peace. Isaiah chapter 54, verse 13 states, "And all thy children shall be taught of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of thy children." So what exactly does this kind of spiritual education entail? Well, the source actually offers 2 distinct views on this. The document outlines 2 main interpretations here. The people will either be taught of the Lord of the Old Testament, or alternatively, they'll be taught of Jesus Christ. But the really interesting unifying thread here is action. Both of these interpretations require actively living by gospel principles that ultimately are said to bring about profound peace and real contentment for the entire nation. Isaiah chapter 54, verse 14 states, "In righteousness shalt thou be established. Thou shalt be far from oppression, for thou shalt not fear, and from terror, for it shall not come near thee." I mean, wow, right? That is a massive, incredibly bold promise. Being established in righteousness and completely free from terror. But how does an ancient promise like that apply to the actual reality on the ground today? The source notes a really important distinction here. While a literal physical blessing of being utterly free from oppression hasn't fully materialized in history just yet, the text views the spirit of this promise as completely active right now. It sort of acts as a symbolic, divine wall of protection against oppression. Okay, let's look at Section 4, Geopolitics and Modern Conflict, specifically touching on the Arab-Israeli wars. Isaiah chapter 54, verse 15 states, "Behold, they shall surely gather together, but not by me. Whosoever shall gather together against thee shall fall for thy sake." Notice that specific phrase right in the middle. Enemies will gather, but not by me. This little detail perfectly sets up the text's most direct application to modern geopolitics. So the text views the Arab-Israeli wars from 1948 straight through to the present through a highly specific theological lens. It argues that nations attacking Israel post-1948 are doing so completely out of their own hatred and totally without divine permission. Because these actions are, as the verse said, not brought on by the Lord, the source essentially asserts that all these modern attempts to gather against the nation are just destined to fail. Moving into Section 5 now, the Creator's control, looking at the fascinating figures of the smith and the waster. Isaiah chapter 54, verse 16 states, "Behold, I have created the smith, that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy." This introduces two distinct, super powerful archetypes to the narrative. Let's break down how they compare. The source draws a really sharp contrast here. On the left side, you have the smith. This is the figure who manufactures the actual instruments of war and refines God's people through the metaphorical fire of challenge. Then, on the right side, there is the waster. This entity actively engaged in spreading desolation and destruction. But the text emphasizes one absolute crucial point. Regardless of how terrifying these forces seem, both entities remain strictly under the Creator's control. They can literally only do exactly what they are permitted to do. No more, no less. And that leads us to our final section, Section 6, the ultimate promise, discussing the heritage of the servants. Isaiah chapter 54, verse 17 states, "No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn." You've probably heard this one before. It is arguably the most famous quote in the entire chapter. And for the source we're examining today, it serves as the ultimate, unshakable geopolitical guarantee. The source takes a totally absolute, uncompromising stance on this final verse. It asserts that literally no weapon crafted by that metaphorical smith we just talked about will ever have the power to destroy the nation of Israel. It reads this ancient text as an ironclad, modern-day guarantee of endurance against any manufactured threat whatsoever. Which leaves us with a final, massive question based on this entire analysis. So how does this reconcile with Armageddon? This concludes our overview.